have arrived at Maureen Reardon's house, a beekeeper in Lowell, Indiana, and we plan to ask her many questions on the bees and why she is such an enthusiast about saving them.
So how did you get started with the bees and like maintaining the hives and things like that?
Well, I got started last year when my husband ordered the hive for me because I'd been talking for years about how I wanted a beehive, I wanted to keep bees and whatnot. So a friend of his was getting a hive for their house. So as kind of a surprise, he said, hey, get one for me. So I came home and the hive was there.
What piqued your interest about saving bees in the first place?
I've always been interested in them because when I was little, the school that I went to, actually our parish priest had a beehive in the back, which is kind of odd, but he kept bees. And so I always was curious about them. And so as time's gone by, I've always just thought they were interesting. And I was just curious and thought it'd be nice to have a hive. That's kind of how it started.
How do you maintain your hives?
Well, I have only had my hive for 1 year. So there's a lot of different theories and philosophies about it. Like I just leave it alone, leave it be. I really leave it alone. Like I think because of what's going on with the bees, my kind of general philosophy has been to let them build a strong hive on their own with the least amount of influence from me as possible. I don't like the idea of chemicals. So there are all these chemicals that you can use. Like there are a couple different problems with bees. There's a certain mite that can infest a hive, or some beetles that can infest a hive. But I haven't used any of that. And just recently I was looking for alternatives to these mites, and I found that there's some what do you call it, like herbs that you can dry and burn, and that smoke, the mites don't like it and they'll jump off the bees. So I've kind of left it alone. I have a garden. No one sprays Roundup around here. There's no chemicals used around here. I planted a floral bed of flowers that bees like, so that it's kind of right there, and they can go forage all over and find what they need.
So do you think it takes a lot of like knowledge and research from like people who don't know anything about bees in order to like help them out and like anyone to save them?
I think that as I was saying, that I approached this, I didn't do any research. And the truth is, the hive was a surprise to me from my husband. So when I had read about it earlier, I thought it would be really complicated, and it kind of scared me off a little bit. But so now then here I have this hive, so I'm like, well, I need to learn what to do with this. In terms of difficulty, it's not difficult. You just have to do the research.
Have you noticed any of your bee populations like declining, or do you know anyone who has beehives that are declining?
There's one gentleman, he was saying that, in some years he's seen decline in his hives. But this is when I talked to him last year, but then last year, things seem to be better for him. Perhaps this buildup of pesticides in the wax in the hive has created this situation where it's then now killing the bees.
Do you think there's anything like you can do or we can do to maybe like prevent this, or is it because we don't know the like cause of why they're dying?
I think that like backyard beekeeping, I think more people should do it. If they die, you need bees to pollinate your plants. Like there's hundreds and thousands of plants that will not bloom if bees don't pollinate them. So, that alone for a food source for humans, it makes it pretty important to keep them. It's a real easy thing to do. You just get a hive and put it in your yard and watch them and enjoy the honey.
So we had to come up with like a way that we could help like make them better for themselves. So like besides the pesticides, it was also a loss of habitat as to why they were like declining. So we came up with the idea of like coming up with a garden like outside of our school. So do you think that'd be beneficial?
Absolutely. Oh gosh, yes. Yeah, and if you can look in any of the books, and even this book here, there's a list of plants that bees like. they like their noses, for lack of a better term, are short, so they like plants that stay open, and they like wildflowers. So if you put a garden at your school, it would definitely attract bees.
Come with us as Maureen shows us her beehive and we observe their everyday lives just in her backyard.
This guy is really full of honey, although we got a couple of bees back. See that? Those guys are coming out, but there's a lot of honey in here too, which is nice. Okay, that's all honey, and it's capped. So like that's what they put. And then here's an area where there were some, they had some bee, because they use one screen to do everything, and then the leftover honey will go in the top one. That's awesome.
So are they like in there?
So the bees, they use that, like that brown part I told you, that's like the brood chamber. So they'll lay eggs, and everything will happen in these hexagonal squares, So first the queen will climb around and lay her eggs, and then after that the bees will hatch, and then they use this space to store their food. So that must be where the queen is, and that must be where all the action is, because they're real busy there.
Maureen is one of the many people in this world who have made an attempt to help save the bees. As she is mentioned in the video, it is very easy to save them, and everyone should partake in helping to save them. Humans need the bees in order to advance in the future, so they are very important to our existence.